Hello, welcome to the Citrus Garden. If you're new here, my name is Christina. If you're not new here, hi, welcome back. It's good to see you. This is a reading for Scorpio rising signs, or if you have significant Scorpio placements and are needing a neutral energy to balance the sun and moon aspects within yourself, then this reading is for you. So Scorpio, I pulled your cards. Your energy feels very excited, or there's almost just almost like a nervous anticipation is kind of how it's feeling. So it feels like you're almost like getting prepared to do something very significant, but it feels very much like closing out a very major cycle, because you have here the Ouroboros, or the Wheel of Fortune in this deck. So it's like it's closing out a really major cycle. I feel like you've been in a very patiently waiting kind of energy in order to complete the cycle and move on to the next chapter or the next thing for you. And what's really interesting here is that for the archetypes, the overall context of this reading, we have the Self, the Ring, which talks about cycles, but also like starting new cycles, entering into new commitments and things like that, and the Queen, which I'm seeing today as being sort of like renewing or entering into this new cycle or commitment to yourself, and perhaps very much with your feminine energies is kind of how this is feeling. So your moon sign might be really significant. So it's more so just overall kind of talking about, I feel like whatever this challenge, this last cycle has been about, it's been about connecting to or discovering or strengthening this aspect of this very powerful feminine aspect within yourself is kind of how I'm seeing this. And because of that, because you've gained this very strong sort of queen-like energy, that's what's sort of propelling you into the next thing. So you have here I'm using this deck today, which is interesting. We have the Blades and the Mirrors, which I really love, because the Blades today is coming through with this energy of like something that requires a lot of responsibility and practice and safety and caution in order to use properly so that it doesn't cause harm, that kind of thing. So I feel like that's something that you've gained in this case, right? You've mastered some aspect of perhaps your power or your gifts, or like, it doesn't even have to be related to that. You could have just, it's talking about responsibility or like caution and preparation, right? Like taking care in order to use some gift or whatever it is with like responsible action. And with the Mirrors here, which is really interesting, because it was coming through as kind of like in the guidebook for this deck, it was talking about how we consult the mirror before making a decision, or like before making a decision, before leaving the house. You check your reflection, right? So there's something here about like, I feel like you're in this stage, Scorpio, where you're like checking your reflection in the mirror, making sure everything's in order, right? Making sure that like you're presenting yourself in the best way, perhaps, before stepping out into this new adventure, which is a really lovely and powerful energy is kind of how this is feeling. So we're going to start with you're reading the current energy. All of these cards came out together, so I'm just going to do it in groups of 3. The Ocean, the Tear, and the Mother, which is so fascinating. Because when I saw these two cards, I was hearing like a drop in the ocean. So I feel like this last cycle that you've been in could have been very overwhelming or emotionally difficult, just because it's kind of feeling like you were feeling like just a drop in the ocean, right? Like feeling overwhelmed by the amount of of water around you, right? Which is so interesting. And there's all of this kind of like, well, it's like reflections, right? Because I feel like what it is that you were learning in this last cycle is reflections, which has so much with the mirrors, right? Like perhaps talking about the people in your environment, perhaps. That's usually how it happens, like how other people in our environment reflect things back to us, right? That can be good or can be difficult. And so I feel like there's something here about learning all of that, like learning who or what is a true reflection of who we are. And if there is a difficult reflecting energy, is there a way that we can integrate that or heal that aspect, or that kind of thing is kind of how this energy is coming through. And especially with the mother here, this is feeling like a rebirth, right? Like rebirthing some aspect of yourself, but it's also feeling like you had to go all the way down to the bottom of the ocean in order to retrieve this pearl, which is like the wisdom or whatever it is. Some aspect of yourself had to be retrieved or integrated or gained. It's feeling really like you had to dive all the way to the bottom of the ocean, and then from here it's like you're pushing up from like the bottom of the seafloor with an incredible amount of power is how this is feeling, which is so fascinating here. The cards to like help explain some of that is we have like the Fishers and the Seven of Wands. So this Seven of Wands with this sort of this castle, right? It looks like an abandoned castle. And the next card to come out for the archetypes was actually the castle. So the castle to me represents a place of learning, right? Like a school, a place of protection as well. So there could have been that aspect where you were whatever period of like this last cycle that you were learning, going through was a significant cycle to learn something about yourself in this sort of castle, which is interesting with the queen, right? The queen in the castle. But the thing about this castle, sorry, there's something there, but it's not coming through right now. It's so interesting because like I watch my readings back in order to improve on like how I deliver the message and things like that. But then it's like when I watch the readings back, I can, because I've had enough like time to think about it, there are like very clear messages that come through that like I wish I had been able to express in the actual video. So I don't know, there may be something like that. Taking time to pause, perhaps. I feel like right now where you are now it might be that. It's taking time to pause, almost like going through all of these rooms again to make sure that you haven't forgotten anything. But it's kind of like with the fissures here, it's this structure or this castle, this place that you've been in is kind of like it's time to go. It's time to leave that because there's nothing else here for you. It's like you've gained all of it's like you got that last little pearl that you needed, and it's like it's time to move on to the next thing is kind of how this is feeling, which is so lovely. But I feel like for you, Scorpio, I feel like because it's almost like you've been in this place for a while, in this patiently waiting kind of place where it's like collecting all of your belongings or like going through all of the rooms to make sure you have everything that you need. But it was like waiting for something because it kind of feels like there was no place for you to go is kind of how this is feeling. And I feel like what's coming in for you now is this miracles. It's coming through as the miracles and the innocent, which is really lovely. So this miracles card is emphasizing the idea that miracles are not just like sort of once in a lifetime things that happen that are really rare and like impossible almost. Miracles happen every day. And it's like, if you are willing to make space and make room for impossible things to happen, they will happen. Most of the time, I feel like we don't see the miracles or acknowledge them because there's too much of a mindset, perhaps, of like, miracles don't happen that often, or they're rare, or they're like not going to happen to me, maybe, right? Like there's that kind of energy here. But it's like, I feel like there is absolutely some sort of miracle happening. I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like for you. But it's kind of like, because where you are now is like, it's done, right? There's nothing else for you to learn in this environment. And so it's like, there's a miracle arriving in order to break you out of this cycle, is kind of how this is feeling. And what's so interesting is that the miracles card in this deck is the last card. And then the innocent is the first card in this deck, right? So there's this interesting thing happening where it's like you're ending one cycle, moving into a completely new one. And it's like there's an arrival of something that's going to help push you into the next thing. And it could even just be like a realization of some sort, or like a sudden clear path, or a new place for you to journey to, maybe something like that. It's coming through the next two cards here. We have the Storm and the Ascendant. So these two cards here are talking to me about some sort of arrival of something. It's kind of how the Storm is feeling. Whenever I see lightning, I see that as being like a very quick moving energy that brings in resources through a breakdown of something, right? Is breaking down molecules in the atmosphere that end up becoming fertilizer, right? So there's something there about there's some sort of energy coming in that brings in more resources, perhaps, and it could just be like a lightning strike of inspiration, maybe. And I love that the Ascendant card is coming out, because this is the rising sign, right? Your rising sign is being Scorpio. Ooh, I keep dropping cards. I feel like that might be some sort of like indication that there's something, like maybe it's coming through inspiration in terms of, I don't know, maybe you're dropping things, or like there's something being dropped on your head or something like that, or I don't know, maybe it's just asking you to pause and make sure that you pick up all of the pieces before continuing. I'm not sure. It's really interesting, but those two cards are coming out with this energy. The Five of Pentacles and the Wise Fox, which is really interesting. The Wise Fox is the Death card, absolutely, which is Scorpio energy, right? So there's something there about, because this card to me always looks like, especially because we have this like haunted looking castle here, this is the place you're leaving, right? But it's kind of like the place that you're leaving has such a draw to it still. For some reason, there's a pull on this energy, or from this energy, because it's kind of like, I feel like you, Scorpio, or like Scorpio energy in general, is so comfortable in energies of like the depths, right? Like going into the depths, being fascinated by things that are difficult for other people to experience, right? So it's kind of like something like, I feel like there's this storm energy is almost coming in to break your focus from this thing that you're in, this, because it might be that you got really comfortable in an energy that's not good for you, is kind of how this is feeling, because you're comfortable there, or it's not something that scares you, or it's not something that it's like you're wanting to learn about it. You're fascinated by the strangeness, is kind of how this is feeling. So the storm is coming in almost to like break your focus and make you turn towards this other energy, which is the innocent, right? The new start. it's coming in to break your focus in order for you to gain, or like to turn towards the new start, right? It's a quick shift from the ending part into the next thing, which is really interesting. I feel like you've kind of already been in that state, though. It's like there's something here as well with the 10 of Swords and the 5 of Pentacles, because these are both really difficult energies. But what this 10 of Swords is coming through from this guidebook is that you're gaining the ability to transcend waking reality. That was the message that came through with this card, which I found fascinating. After a really difficult experience. So you're transcending some sort of waking reality. And with this fish, it's almost like a vision or something like that. There's a vision, especially because it's coming through with the ocean, that's allowing you to leave the ocean, leave the overwhelm, perhaps, if like emotional overwhelm maybe. But with this sort of symbol here, it's like talking about knowledge or ancient knowledge. You're gaining some sort of ancient knowledge here that's allowing you to transcend, or with the Ascendant card, like move into the world or move into a new cycle or something like that. What's really interesting though is that you have here the Threshold, which is the last archetype card that came after the Storm card, which is so interesting because here you also have the Lady of Pentacles, which I really love because this one to me looks like a fertility figure. But what's so interesting about this card is that the feet are missing, right? There's no feet on this statue, but the Threshold card has only the feet, which is so interesting. So what I'm seeing from this is kind of like, I feel like part of the realization or something like that, that perhaps this storm energy is bringing in for you. It's kind of like, and now it's coming through with like frostbite, right? It's like this energy that you've been in, the castle, the haunted castle, right? It's like you went into a haunted house, for example, and then because you were fascinated by what it was that you were seeing there, it's almost like there was almost like a spell or something that was put on you, and in the meantime, it's like you were getting frostbite on your feet. I don't know what that means metaphorically. It's kind of just like the place that you're in, the environment, the energy, because of you being Scorpio, right? You being comfortable in darkness is kind of how this is feeling. Or comfortable in uncomfortable situations. You managed to find some sort of comfort or fascination with a very uncomfortable situation. And it's like you've learned a lot there, but now this energy is coming in to remind you, like to put fire to your cold feet because there's more for you to discover, right? It's like this Lady of Pentacles I normally see as a very positive energy, right? Like it is a very welcoming, positive energy. But today it's kind of like a statue, right? Like it's looking very much like something non-living. It's like you became frozen over, or there's like some sort of it's not quite stuckness, but it kind of, that's the closest thing I can find to describe that, right? It's like your feet were getting frostbite in this environment, and so it's like the storm is bringing a fire to your feet in order to get you moving again. Is kind of how this is feeling, right? It's in order to get you moving again, and because here, which is so interesting, the Lady of Wands, right? Because I feel like it's like that's kind of where the energy is that you are now, right? Or you're going to be going into. The Lady of Wands, which is the Queen of Wands, but in the guidebook it was bringing in this energy of like someone who can calm storms, right? It's an energy of serenity and peace and stillness. So it's kind of like even though this energy feels like it's like, okay, now I need to move, but Scorpio, you're still taking the time, which I really love. I really love this kind of this checking the mirror aspect where it's like you're still taking the time to, like, you're not moving out of panic is what this is talking about, right? You're not, there's a fire under your feet, but you're not moving in an energy of panic or fear or anything like that. It's like you're taking your time, you're looking for the best option kind of thing before taking action, which I really love. Making sure that everything's in order, making sure that you've cleaned out your space, making sure that you haven't forgotten anything in this place that you're in, and then moving forward with a very deliberate action. Because the next card here, I dropped another card, the Ace of Swords, right? It's like with the truth, which I really love. And it's like this, the snake from the Innocent is coming in to break open some egg, right? Like some sort of thing that's been in the threshold stages, right? Some sort of pause or waiting or nesting energy. That's what's coming, like that's what the Innocent is bringing. But also because the snake is upside down, it's saying that you're not an innocent is kind of how this is feeling. Which is to say that not saying that you're guilty. That's not what I mean. It's what I'm saying is that you're not naive in this case, right? You're not, you're moving forward with a lot of wisdom, right? Because you've gained some sort of knowledge or understanding with this, like, it's incredibly peaceful, right? It's kind of like you're waiting for the right opportunity to move forward with the Sun as well. It's all of this clarity, divine blessing, divine connection. Like you're moving forward with so much wisdom is kind of how this is feeling. And then the last two cards here are the Music and the Geometry, which I really love because just in terms of the numbers, it's 38, 39, which is talking about progression, but also if you break those numbers down, it's 11 and 12. So this to me talks about alignment and completion. Those are what those numbers represent to me. And so I feel like it's here with this energy here, the Ace of Swords and the Lady of Wands. It's talking about taking time to listen to the right course of action, or acknowledging that there are certain alignments that have to take place. But it's kind of like that's part of the information that you've gained or learned. And it's like that's what's helping you to make the next decision as well. Because recognizing that this pattern or this cycle is going to restart or something like that, it's all going to happen again. It's almost like with the music, right? There's so many. I'm just thinking of like the structure of songs, right? Like there are verses, there's chorus, there's the bridge. Perhaps you're at the bridge again, and it's like you're singing the chorus one last time before stepping into the next song, right? There's this ending here that's happening. It's really significant. So Scorpio, I'm going to end the message there. We're going to move to the extended. If you're interested in that, that's in the description box. We're going to talk about what's something else you may need to know about the situation. If this message resonated with you, please consider subscribing, liking, or leaving a comment. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with me, and I hope you have a great day.